Welcome, dear dreamers, to another peaceful night with whispers of the night. Tonight, we invite you to leave behind the bustle of your day, to let your mind rest, and to enter a world of gentle lights and quiet magic. Before we begin our journey together, take a moment to breathe deeply in through your nose and out through your mouth. Feel your shoulders soften, your body becoming lighter with each exhale. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell so you never miss another soothing story, a gentle moment of calm, or a peaceful journey into dreams. Let this night be a sanctuary, a time just for you, a pause from all the noise and hurry outside. We will wander together through a village shrouded in mist, where memories wait like soft lights, and where courage and hope can glow even in the quietest corners. This is The Last Light in the Fog, a bedtime story for restful sleep. Allow yourself to settle comfortably now, letting the bed support you, letting your body feel heavy and at ease. Close your eyes if you wish, or simply soften your gaze and imagine a gentle fog rolling across quiet streets, lanterns flickering softly, and a warm glow guiding the way. With each breath, feel the tension of the day melting away, replaced by calm, stillness, and quiet wonder. We will move slowly tonight, exploring the magic hidden in light, in shadow, and in every gentle corner of this village. Let the whispers of the night carry you, guiding you toward rest, toward peace, toward a dream-filled evening. So, dear dreamers, take one last deep breath, hold it, and let it go slowly. Let the calm fill you, let the warmth of the lights surround you, and let the story of the last light in the fog begin, guiding your mind and heart into serenity. Now, dear dreamers, let us slowly walk into the heart of the fog, where calm and quiet magic await. Take a deep breath in and let it out slowly. Feel your body sinking gently into comfort. Your mind is safe here. Your thoughts may drift like the soft fog, light and weightless. Imagine the village before you. Streets covered in delicate mist, golden lanterns flickering softly along cobblestone paths. The lighthouse stands in the distance, its steady light casting a warm, gentle glow over everything it touches. Every step you take along these quiet streets brings a sense of calm, a sense of safety, a sense of peace. As you walk slowly, notice the soft hush of the wind through the rooftops, the distant ripple of the river, the gentle sway of branches brushing in the fog. Feel the quiet magic of the village embrace you, letting all tension slip from your shoulders. Each inhale brings serenity. Each exhale releases any remaining worry or tension. The fog may swirl around you, but you are guided by light, small, golden lights flickering patiently along the paths. They are steady, resilient, and warm. Feel your own inner light beginning to glow, gentle, soft, steady, connecting with the warmth of the lanterns, the gentle beams from the lighthouse, and the quiet strength. Every window, every shimmering reflection in a puddle reminds you of calm, of patience, of stillness. Let your imagination drift with the lanterns, with the gentle sway of light and shadow. letting every detail guide you deeper into relaxation. Walk slowly, dreamer, step by step through the fog, letting the mist brush your skin like a soft blanket. Notice how each flicker of light calms your thoughts, softens your breathing, and brings a profound sense of ease. Now, pause for a moment in the center of the village. Notice how safe it feels, how every lamp, every warm glow, every soft whisper of light is holding you, gently carrying Yaudipur into comfort, deeper into sleep. Feel the steady pulse of your heartbeat align with the rhythm of the village, each lantern, each shadow, each gentle ripple of water. The fog has lifted within your mind, leaving only serenity, leaving only light, leaving only peace. Take one more slow breath in, hold it, and release. Let the calm settle fully into your body. Let your mind drift gently into dreams, letting the warmth of the village, the steady glow of the lighthouse, and the last light in the fog guide you into restful, peaceful sleep, tonight and always. The last light in the fog. The vanishing village. In the coastal village, the fog crept earlier each evening, curling through the narrow streets and winding alleyways as though it were a living thing. The villagers had grown cautious, their steps measured, their voices hushed, as if speaking too loudly might disturb the fog's strange, consuming presence. Houses that had once seemed warm and inviting now loomed with softened edges, their outlines fading into the gray mist. Smoke rose slowly from chimneys, curling upward and vanishing before it could reach the sky, and the faint scent of salt water hung thickly in the air, blending with the damp chill that clung to every corner of the village. Elowen walked carefully along the cobblestone streets, the soles of her worn boots pressing gently against the stones, slick with moisture. The air was heavy and still, carrying the quiet hum of the sea beyond the cliffs. She pulled her shawl closer around her shoulders, feeling the soft warmth against her skin, a small comfort against the creeping dampness. Her gaze followed the familiar shapes of her village, the small bakery with its darkened windows, the row of cottages with shutters slightly ajar, the quiet town square where a single fountain trickled faintly, its waters disappearing into the gray. Yet something felt different tonight. The fog was thicker than usual, rolling in with a soft, insistent pressure, and it seemed to carry with it a tiny flicker of light that shimmered just beyond the reach of the street lamps. It was unusual, delicate, almost ethereal, like a reflection on water or a distant star caught in the mist. Her heart stirred, a gentle tug that urged her forward, even as her mind cautioned restraint. The village had long been accustomed to strange occurrences. The fog itself had a peculiar rhythm, and it was said that those who wandered too far could lose their way, never to be seen again. Yet the light called to her with a subtle insistence that felt personal, intimate, as if it had been waiting for someone like her to notice it. Elowen moved carefully, keeping to the edges of the streets, where the cobblestones rose slightly beneath the water's thin sheen. Each step carried a soft echo, swallowed almost immediately by the thickness of the fog. The sound of her breathing seemed unusually loud, and she found herself listening to the small creaks of the wooden shutters, the distant lapping of waves against the cliffs, and the faint rustle of leaves along the edges of the town. Every ordinary sound felt amplified in the stillness, as if the village itself were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As she approached the glimmering light, it began to shift, almost imperceptibly. At first, she thought it might be a reflection from a window or a trick of the mist, but the movement was deliberate, a soft sway that seemed almost alive. It pulsed faintly, drawing her closer with each step, and she realized that it was not merely a light, but something more, a presence, perhaps a secret that had been hidden in the fog for years. Her curiosity deepened, a quiet but persistent flame kindling in her chest. She wondered why no one else in the village had noticed it, why the other villagers continued their cautious routines without pause. Perhaps they had grown too accustomed to the fog, to its creeping influence, to the way it swallowed the edges of their world. Perhaps, she thought, they had simply forgotten how to look. Elowen's footsteps carried her along the narrow streets, past familiar homes whose features now appeared softened and unfamiliar under the veil of mist. The windows reflected only muted shadows, and the faint glow of her lantern cast trembling patterns on the cobblestones. The village, once vibrant with laughter and activity, now seemed suspended in a quiet limbo, caught between night and the promise of morning, between memory and oblivion. The fog was thicker here, swirling in gentle eddies around corners, brushing against her cheeks with a damp, cooling touch. And yet, despite the damp chill, she felt a growing warmth, a gentle anticipation that seemed to emanate from the very light she was following. It led her toward the cliffs that overlooked the sea, the path narrowing and the wind beginning to pick up, carrying with it the faint scent of salt and seaweed. The waves below crashed softly against jagged rocks, their rhythm steady and calming, yet the fog made it difficult to judge distance. The glimmer floated just ahead, and as she drew closer, she realized it was not a star or reflection at all, but a lantern, small and delicate, hovering above the water as if suspended by invisible threads. Its light was soft and warm, golden against the silver gray of the fog, and it seemed to sway gently, beckoning her forward without urgency, yet with a certainty that she could not ignore. Elowen felt a thrill of wonder, the kind that comes when something unexpected and beautiful enters a familiar world. She had grown up in this village, walked these streets countless times, and yet never had she seen anything like this. There was magic here, subtle and quiet, not the kind that announces itself with fireworks or spectacle, but the kind that lingers in small details, a flicker of light in the mist, the soft brush of wind against her hair, the distant cry of a gull carried on the evening air. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with the sense that she was on the verge of discovering something extraordinary. The lantern seemed to float gently above the cliffs, its glow reflecting in the small pools of water that had collected in the uneven stones beneath her feet. She reached the edge of the cliffs, and for a moment she simply watched. The village lay behind her, swallowed almost entirely by fog, and in front the sea stretched into indistinct darkness, waves moving with a quiet, steady rhythm. The lantern's light seemed impossibly small against the vastness of the night, yet it carried a warmth that filled the chest, a reassurance that even in the thickest fog, there is something constant, something enduring, something worth seeking. Elowen stepped closer, and the fog shifted as if in response, thinning slightly to reveal a narrow path of stones leading toward the lantern. She felt a gentle hesitation, the kind that comes when one stands at the threshold of something unknown. But the pull of curiosity, of wonder, was stronger. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her, of lights that appeared to those who needed guidance, of paths that only revealed themselves to those with hearts willing to seek. Perhaps this was such a light, she thought. Perhaps it had chosen her tonight, in this very moment, to follow it where it might lead. With careful steps, she moved forward, the soft crunch of stone beneath her boots mingling with the distant murmur of the sea. The fog swirled around her ankles, then around her waist, then lifted slightly, as though making space for her passage. The lantern pulsed gently, casting a glow on the waves, illuminating fragments of sea foam that glittered like tiny stars scattered across the water. Each step she took seemed to bring a sense of release, a loosening of the weight that the fog had pressed upon the village, upon its people, and upon herself. She paused midway along the stone path, taking in the quiet beauty of the scene. The fog, though thick, was not oppressive. It carried with it a stillness, a meditative pause in time. The waves whispered faintly, the lantern glimmered steadily, and she felt a sense of connection to the village, to the sea, to the night itself. A realization settled in her chest. The fog was not only a shroud, but also a veil, something that could hide the past, but also protect what was waiting to be revealed. And the light, fragile, persistent, and warm, was the key to understanding both. Elowen continued, each step deliberate, mindful, and filled with anticipation. She noticed how the mist parted just enough for her to see her own reflection in the shallow pools along the stones. She saw herself clearly, yet not fully, a young woman on the edge of discovery, poised between what had always been familiar and what had yet to be revealed. The lantern's glow reflected in her eyes, and for the first time in many evenings, she felt the village's magic, however quiet and forgotten, awaken again within her as she reached the end of the stone path. The lantern hovered at eye level, its light steady and unwavering. She stretched out her hand, almost instinctively, feeling a warmth radiate toward her fingertips. The air around her seemed to hum faintly, carrying the scent of salt and stone, of damp earth and distant flowers. And for a moment, she understood that the village's fading warmth had not vanished completely. It had simply been waiting for someone willing to notice, to follow, to step into the quiet mystery of the fog. Elowen lingered for a long while, gazing at the lantern, feeling the pull of curiosity and the gentle invitation of the unknown. She knew that her life in the village, once ordinary and quiet, had shifted irrevocably. Something had begun tonight, something subtle but profound. A story of light emerging from shadow, of courage discovered in stillness, and of paths revealed where none seemed to exist. The fog no longer felt suffocating, but protective, and the lantern no longer distant, but a companion, a guide, and a promise. With a final deep breath of the salt-tinged night air, she stepped closer, allowing the warmth of the light to wash over her, filling her chest with hope and anticipation. The village behind her seemed smaller, softened into shadow, while the path ahead, illuminated by the fragile golden glow, beckoned her forward. And in that moment, Elowen understood, without doubt or question, that she would follow this light wherever it might lead, that she would uncover its secret, and that she would help restore the warmth that had been lost to the fog for so long. The night deepened, the waves whispered on, and the fog curled and swirled around her. Yet she felt no fear, only calm determination. Somewhere beyond the mist, beyond the lantern, beyond the edge of what was familiar, a story awaited, waiting for her courage, waiting for her attention, waiting for her heart to step fully into the quiet magic of the village once more. And so, with measured, mindful steps, Elowen began to follow the last light in the fog, letting its golden glow guide her through the unknown, toward a secret that would change the village and herself forever. The Lantern Keeper. The cliffs rose sharply above the restless sea, jagged and wet with the spray of waves that never seemed to rest. Elowen's steps were cautious as she made her way along the narrow, winding path leading to the lighthouse. The fog wrapped around her like a living curtain, curling through her hair, clinging to her coat, and softening the edges of the jagged rocks beneath her boots. The lantern she had followed from the village flickered faintly ahead, a beacon in the dense gray, and she felt its pull as insistently as she had the night before. Her chest swelled with a mixture of curiosity and a strange, quiet apprehension. The kind that comes when one senses that a story, long hidden, is waiting to be discovered. The lighthouse had stood there for as long as she could remember, or so the village stories claimed, but it had long been abandoned, its white paint peeling, the windows dark and empty, the iron railing rusted by decades of wind and salt. Tonight, however, it seemed different. A faint golden glow spilled from the topmost chamber, a small, flickering light that defied the emptiness she had been told it contained. She moved closer, each step accompanied by the soft roar of waves crashing against the cliffs below and the distant cries of gulls caught in the fog. As she approached the heavy wooden door, she hesitated, feeling the weight of the place, a history suspended in silence. The hinges groaned as she pushed it open, and a narrow, spiral staircase revealed itself, dust motes drifting lazily in the golden glow above. The smell of old wood and stone mixed with something she could not quite name, the faint hint of candle smoke, salt water, and something warm, almost like home. She climbed slowly, her hand brushing against the worn railing, each step resonating softly in the emptiness at the top. The light revealed itself more fully, a small chamber, circular and intimate, lined with shelves that held glass lanterns, each containing a tiny flame that glimmered like captured stars. The largest lantern rested on a wooden pedestal in the center, its light steady yet flickering softly, as if breathing. And tending to it was a figure cloaked in deep green, their face partially hidden beneath the hood. The lantern keeper moved with gentle deliberation, adjusting the wick, coaxing the flame to dance without extinguishing, as though it were a living thing rather than a mere object. Elowen paused, unsure whether to announce herself, but the keeper seemed to know she was there. Slowly, the figure turned, revealing a calm, lined face and eyes that shimmered with the reflected glow of the lanterns. Their voice, when it came, was soft, yet carried a weight of quiet authority. "You have followed the light," they said simply. "Few notice it. Fewer still have the courage to step beyond what they know. Why do you come?" Elowen swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I saw the lantern from the village. I felt pulled. I don't know why, but I had to follow it." The lantern keeper nodded, as if hearing exactly what they expected. "The fog is not merely weather," they said, their tone gentle yet precise. "It is woven from what is forgotten, memories left behind, hopes that faded unspoken, stories that were never told. It gathers and thickens when the light of remembrance wanes. This is why the village seems trapped, silent. The fog feeds on absence, on what has been neglected." Elowen felt a shiver run down her spine, the weight of understanding settling into her chest. She had noticed it herself, the way the streets seemed smaller, quieter, as though the life of the village were dimming. "So, the light," she began, hesitant, "it protects us, or does it show us what we've lost?" The keeper's eyes softened. "Both. The lanterns hold fragments of what has been nearly forgotten. Some are hopes, some are regrets, and some are possibilities that never had a chance to exist. Each flame is fragile. Each must be tended. Too much attention too soon, and the light may overwhelm. Too little, and it dies quietly, unnoticed." Elowen stepped closer to the central lantern, mesmerized by the way the flame seemed alive, flickering in rhythm with her heartbeat. The warmth of it reached her chest, spreading slowly, subtly, through her limbs, bringing a comfort she had not realized she had been missing. She could feel, faintly, that the light was not just illumination for the eyes, but a gentle mending of the soul, coaxing lost fragments back to their proper place. The lantern keeper moved to stand beside her, their presence calm and steady, like a steady heartbeat in a quiet room. "The fog tests us," they said. "It shows us what we fear, what we ignore, what we leave behind. To navigate it, one must learn the balance of light and shadow, when to move forward and when to linger, when to look back and when to let go. You have followed the light, and that is the first step." Elowen's fingers brushed the lantern's surface, careful not to disturb it. "But how do I know which flame to follow?" she asked. "There are so many, and each seems to call to me." "Each is a thread," the keeper replied. "Some threads lead outward, some inward. Some reveal what has been lost, and others show what might yet be. The challenge is learning to recognize the light that speaks to your heart, the one that guides without blinding, that teaches without demanding." Elowen nodded slowly, her eyes tracing the small lanterns that lined the shelves. Tiny flickers danced, each one different, some bright, some dim, some trembling like cautious hearts. She realized that the fog in the village had not been a mere inconvenience, nor a mere obstacle, but a reflection of what had been neglected, of what had been silenced. And these lights were not just guides, they were teachers, offering lessons in patience, courage, and quiet reflection. The keeper gestured toward the central flame. "This one is special," they said. It has endured longer than the rest, though it has needed tending. It is not the brightest, nor the most beautiful, but it has persistence. It waits for those willing to see it, willing to care for it. You have found it, and now you must learn its lesson. Elowen leaned closer, studying the flame. She could feel a subtle rhythm, a pulsing warmth that seemed to mirror her own heartbeat. She thought of the villagers, their lives slowed and softened by the fog, their dreams dimmed by fear and neglect. She understood, in a quiet, unspoken way, that this was not simply about lighting lanterns. It was about nurturing hope, tending to what had been forgotten, and helping others remember their own inner light. The fog, she murmured, more to herself than to the keeper. It's not just outside the village. It's inside us, too, isn't it? The keeper nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of their mouth. Yes, that is why the lanterns must be tended, not only to guide the lost, but to remind the living, to illuminate the paths we forget to see within ourselves. For a long moment, Elowen stood silently, watching the flame sway gently, learning its subtle dance. She felt the fog pressing at the edges of the lighthouse, thick and gray, but no longer frightening. Instead, it seemed expectant, as though waiting to see what she would do next. And in that quiet, suspended space between light and shadow, she realized the journey she had begun in the village was only the first step. The lantern would teach her patience. It would teach her courage. And most of all, it would teach her to see the hidden lights that flickered quietly in the hearts of others outside. The wind rose again, carrying the scent of the sea and the faint rustle of waves over the rocks. The fog rolled and twisted along the cliffs, weaving itself around the lighthouse like a soft veil. But within the warm, flickering glow of the chamber, Elowen felt steady. She had discovered something precious, the delicate balance between light and shadow, between hope and neglect, between fear and courage. She knew that the fog was not something to be defeated, but understood, not something to fear, but to navigate with care and attention. The keeper's voice, calm and unwavering, carried through the chamber. "Do not rush," they said. "Learn to move gently. The lanterns will guide you when the time is right, but you must be ready. You must be patient, and you must be willing to see what others cannot." Elowen nodded, her eyes still fixed on the central flame. She felt a quiet determination settle within her, a sense of purpose that had been absent in the fog-bound village for as long as she could remember. She realized that the light was not only for her, but for everyone, a beacon of possibility, a spark of courage, and a reminder that even the densest fog could not obscure what was meant to shine. And so, she stayed for a long while, tending her gaze to the flame, feeling the warmth seep into her chest, learning the rhythm of its gentle flicker, and understanding the silent, steady heartbeat of the lantern. Outside, the fog rolled in waves, dense and shifting. But inside the lighthouse, light endured, patient and unwavering. And Elowen knew that she would carry this lesson forward, beyond the cliffs, beyond the village, into the hearts and paths of those who had forgotten the quiet, enduring power of hope. whispers in the mist. The fog stretched across the village like a thick, silken sheet, muffling sound and softening edges until familiar shapes became ghostly illusions. Elowen stepped carefully along the cobblestone streets, each footfall swallowed almost immediately by the mist, as if the world itself were holding its breath. The lantern from the lighthouse, still glowing faintly behind the cliffs, was too far to guide her directly, but its warmth lingered in her memory, a gentle reassurance that she was not entirely alone as she moved deeper into the gray haze. Faint whispers began to drift through the air. At first, they were indistinct, like the echo of voices caught in a dream. They rose and fell with the rhythm of the fog itself, carried softly across the empty streets. Elowen paused, listening carefully. The sounds were subtle, yet insistent, tugging at the edges of her consciousness. They were voices of the village, yet distorted, as though filtered through years of silence and forgetfulness. Slowly, shapes began to emerge from the fog. Shadowy figures moved at the periphery of her vision, barely distinguishable from the mist that surrounded them. Some appeared to be villagers, frozen in mid-step. Others seemed like fragments of people she had never seen before, faces familiar only in feeling. Each carried a faint glow, a flicker of light that shimmered like a heartbeat in the fog. These were memories, she realized, pieces of lives that had been hidden or neglected. Lingering in the village like echoes, Elowen felt a shiver of awe and trepidation. The fog was alive with remembrance, a living tapestry of the village's hidden history. Every corner she turned revealed another whisper, another shadow, another fragment of light struggling to exist. Some of the figures spoke in low murmurs, words she could not entirely catch, but their tone was plaintive, soft, as if calling for attention after years of neglect. She understood instinctively that these whispers were not threats. They were invitations, reminders of what had been forgotten, what had been lost, and what could be reclaimed. Stepping cautiously, Elowen reached out a hand toward one of the faintly glowing figures, a young woman frozen as she carried a basket of flowers that had long since wilted. As Elowen drew closer, the light within the figure brightened subtly, pulsing gently, as if acknowledging her presence. The whispering voice grew clearer, soft and tentative. "Do you remember?" Elowen nodded, though she did not fully understand what she was affirming. "I remember," she said softly. "I see you." The figure's glow responded, flickering like a candle stirred by a gentle wind. Encouraged, Elowen moved on, approaching another shadow, an elderly man sitting on a doorstep with an unread letter clutched in his hands. His glow was weaker, almost imperceptible, but when she whispered, "You are not forgotten," the light deepened, a faint warmth radiating into the surrounding fog. Each encounter strengthened her understanding. The village was filled with fragments of light, yet fear, neglect, and silence had dimmed them. The people themselves had not entirely lost their inner sparks, but they had allowed the fog to settle, covering them, muffling the glow that had once shone brightly. And now, in the presence of the lantern's memory, in the wake of the keeper's lesson, she could see what was waiting to be rekindled. Elowen began to walk more deliberately, moving along the twisting streets, identifying flickers of light wherever they appeared. Some required her attention more than others. A small child clutching a broken toy whose glow had nearly vanished. a mother weeping silently on a doorstep, her light tangled in sorrow. A young man standing alone in the mist, his hands shaking, afraid even to lift his gaze. With every soft word, with every gentle touch, she coaxed the lights to grow stronger, as if reminding the villagers that they were seen, that their presence mattered, that their stories were not lost. The fog responded to her effort. Where once it had pressed heavily, concealing all detail, it now shifted subtly, curling around the glowing fragments like a protective shawl rather than a suffocating veil. Shadows that had seemed threatening softened, and the whispers, though still murmured, began to harmonize, rising and falling in a rhythm that felt like a quiet chorus. Elowen realized the fog was not her enemy. It was a mirror, a reflection of what had been forgotten, and through her guidance, it could transform into something gentle and illuminating rather than obscure and oppressive. Hours passed. Though she could not say exactly how many, time had lost its usual meaning in the presence of the fog and the whispering lights. Elowen moved slowly, deliberately, guiding the flickers wherever they appeared. She saw villagers awaken to forgotten memories, a baker recalling the scent of freshly baked bread, a teacher remembering lessons long cherished, a child remembering the joy of play along the shoreline. Each memory strengthened the flickering light, sending pulses through the fog that illuminated the nearby streets with faint radiance. At one point, she approached a figure partially obscured in the thick mist, a young man whose glow was barely visible, trembling as if threatened by the fog itself. He raised a hand as though to shield himself, but Elowen spoke softly, her words deliberate. "You are not alone. You are remembered. Your light matters." The figure paused, and slowly his glow deepened, spreading outward until it illuminated the cobblestones beneath their feet and mingled with the faint reflections of other lights nearby. The fog around him shifted, curling upward like a gentle wave, no longer oppressive but protective. She was a guide, a catalyst. The fog did not vanish on its own. The lights required attention, care, and acknowledgement. They needed her voice, her presence, her willingness to believe that even the smallest glimmers mattered. And as she continued through the village, the whispers grew stronger, a gentle chorus rising from the fog, soft and harmonious, like a lullaby woven from memory and hope. The moon had risen higher, silver and pale, casting its soft light on the mist-covered village. The glow of the lanterns intermingled with moonlight, creating a subtle interplay of shadows and illumination that shifted with every movement. Elowen found herself pausing at familiar places, seeing them in new ways. The fountain in the square now reflecting tiny fragments of light, the rooftops catching the glow in delicate patterns, the waves below glimmering faintly as if echoing the awakening lights above. The village was alive in a way it had not been for years, subtle yet undeniable, its heartbeat returning to the rhythm of remembrance. As the night deepened, Elowen began to notice something more profound. Each flicker of light she nurtured did not remain isolated. The lights began to interact, intertwining gently, pulsing in tandem, creating soft arcs of illumination across the fog. They were no longer just fragments, but threads, weaving a delicate network of memory, hope, and courage. The village itself became a living tapestry, each light a vital stitch in a larger story of resilience and quiet renewal. The whispers, once indistinct, became almost intelligible. A melody of remembered voices, laughter, soft conversations, and unspoken thoughts wove through the streets. Elowen moved carefully, guiding the faintest glimmers, reminding each figure that their light mattered, that their presence had value. She felt a sense of deep satisfaction, not pride, but calm understanding. The work was quiet, subtle, and patient, yet profoundly transformative. At one point, she stopped to observe a young girl standing near a shuttered window, clutching a small book with trembling hands. Her glow was faint, almost imperceptible. Elowen approached gently and whispered, "It is safe to remember. Your story belongs here, and it is not forgotten." Slowly, the light responded, brightening just enough to cast a soft reflection across the fog, and the girl's shadow shifted from hesitant to confident, her posture straightening as though she had regained a long-lost certainty. Elowen realized that the fog was not merely a barrier, but also a teacher. It showed what had been neglected, what had been silenced, and what required care. In guiding the villagers' lights, she also learned more about herself, her patience, her empathy, her courage, and her capacity to nurture delicate hope in the midst of uncertainty. Every flicker she attended, every whisper she acknowledged, strengthened not only the village, but the steady flame within her own heart. By the time the first hints of dawn brushed the horizon with pale gold, the fog had begun to thin slightly, retreating from the strongest lights. The village remained quiet, but there was a new sense of rhythm, a subtle pulse that spoke of remembrance, of life returning to spaces that had been dormant. Elowen stood in the midst of the awakening village, surrounded by gentle glimmers that had grown under her care, and felt the quiet satisfaction of having restored something vital. The whispers had transformed from hesitant murmurs into a soft chorus, harmonizing with the rhythm of the waves, the rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of waking birds. Elowen knew this was only the beginning. The fog would return, and new whispers would arise. But now she understood her role. She was a guide, a witness, a caretaker of light in a world that often forgot its own warmth. The villagers had begun to remember, to see, and to reclaim what had been dim. And in that realization, Elowen felt a profound sense of connection to the village, to the lantern's light, and to the quiet, enduring power of hope that even the densest fog could not obscure. And so, she continued to walk the streets, mindful and patient, listening to the whispers, tending to the flickering lights, and nurturing the delicate glow that would ensure the village remembered itself once more. With every step, the fog seemed less intimidating, more pliable, a canvas waiting to be painted with the warmth of rekindled memories. The mist still moved, curling around corners and softening edges, but now it carried possibility, not threat. And Elowen knew that she would follow the whispers in the mist, tending the lights, guiding the village, and allowing the last light in the fog to shine ever brighter. The flickering heart, the fog lay thick across the village, curling through streets and alleys, threading itself around rooftops, and settling into the hollow spaces of houses long emptied by neglect. Elowen moved carefully, the weight of the mist pressing gently against her shoulders. The warmth of the lantern's glow from the lighthouse lingered in her mind. A quiet beacon, yet tonight a different sensation tugged at her Shesta hollow ache, subtle but insistent, that she had not noticed before. The village was awakening under her guidance, but she realized with a pang that something within herself had remained hidden, even from her own awareness. She paused at the edge of the square, the cobblestones slick with fog, and looked around. The faint lights she had nurtured glimmered across the village, small yet persistent, like embers refusing to be extinguished. But within her, a flicker of discomfort remained quiet, gnawing loneliness, the kind that is not easily named. It had been buried beneath routines, under years of familiarity, yet here it was, exposed by the fog and the gentle work of tending light. She had guided the villagers to remember, yet she had not confronted her own shadows. The lantern keeper appeared silently beside her, stepping through the mist with the quiet confidence of someone who moves without disturbing the world. Their eyes reflected the soft glow of the village lights, steady and knowing. "The fog shows what is hidden," they said softly. "You have been tending the village, rekindling forgotten sparks, yet your own light flickers in quiet shadows. To nurture others fully, you must first learn to nurture yourself." Elowen felt the truth of this settle in her chest. She had been so focused on the flickers around her that she had ignored the subtle pulse within her own heart. There was fear, there, quiet and persistent, fear of failing, fear of being forgotten, fear of venturing into unknown paths without certainty of what lay ahead. She understood now that this was what the lantern keeper meant. The fog did not merely conceal the village. It had also hidden fragments of her own self, dreams she had left unattended, hopes she had whispered away into silence. I don't know where to begin," she admitted softly. "I've been tending the village, guiding its lights, but I haven't faced my own. How do I even start?" The keeper gestured to the center of the square, where a single faint glow flickered, weaker than the others. "Every light begins with acknowledgement," they said. "See it, embrace it, and nurture it gently. Your courage, your dreams, your forgotten hopes, they are all part of the light you carry. You cannot pour warmth into others if your own flame trembles in shadow." Elowen knelt beside the weak glow, her fingers hovering above it, careful not to disturb the fragile ember. She closed her eyes, listening to the whisper of her own heart, and allowed herself to remember the dreams she had tucked away, the stories she had imagined in childhood but never written, the melodies she had hummed but never played, the paths she had longed to take but had feared would lead to nothing. Each memory brought a small ache, a mixture of longing and regret. Yet the lantern keeper's presence was steady, a gentle reminder that acknowledgement was the first step to nurturing. She breathed slowly, inhaling the damp, salty air, and let the memories flow without judgment. The weak glow responded subtly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat, as though recognizing that she was finally paying attention. She whispered softly, "I remember. I am here. I am willing to face what I have hidden." The fog seemed to shift around her, curling less tightly, and the lights of the village glimmered more vividly, as if reflecting her internal acknowledgement. For hours, she tended her own flickering heart, guided by the keeper's quiet instructions. She imagined the warmth spreading from her chest, connecting to each of the lights she had nurtured across the village, intertwining her courage with the hope she had restored in others. Each flicker she attended seemed to pulse brighter in response, and the fog, once oppressive, became a gentle shroud, protective and soft rather than stifling. The village, she realized, mirrored her own journey, small lights hidden in shadow, waiting to be recognized and cherished. The keeper spoke again, their voice like a gentle stream. Courage is not the absence of fear, they said. It is the willingness to see it, to acknowledge it, and to move forward despite it. Your light is strongest not when it blazes unrestrained, but when it flickers in quiet defiance of darkness. Elowen reflected on these words, feeling the weight of truth in them. The fog had never been an enemy. It was a reflection, a mirror, a teacher. It had shown her the village's hidden shadows and now revealed her own. In tending her flickering heart, she understood that the magic of the lanterns was not just in their illumination, but in the way they reflected inner courage, patience, and resilience. Every spark, no matter how faint, had value, and every shadow contained the potential for light. As the night deepened, she walked through the village once more, the warmth of her own renewed courage flowing subtly through her limbs. She stopped by the young girl who had held the small book, her glow now steady and unwavering. Elowen reached out, letting the warmth from her chest radiate gently, and whispered, "Your story is safe. Your light is strong." The girl's glow pulsed brighter, merging with Elowen's own faint internal radiance, and for a moment, the two lights danced together, a quiet celebration of acknowledgement and care. She continued through the streets, attending to the faintest embers, those near the edges of perception, where fear and doubt still lingered. Each flicker she nurtured was a lesson for herself, as much as it was for the villagers. She learned patience, understanding, and the profound importance of attention. The fog, thick and swirling around her, seemed less threatening now. Its edges softened, its presence transformed from an obstacle to a gentle companion that reflected the inner work she was undertaking. Hours passed like moments, each step deliberate, each breath measured, each thought conscious of the delicate balance between shadow and light. She understood that the flickering heart she nurtured within herself was not a solitary flame, but part of a network connected to the village and the world beyond. Courage, hope, and remembrance were not isolated. They flowed outward, touching others, guiding them, and reinforcing the rhythm of life within the community. By the time dawn painted the horizon with pale gold, the fog had thinned slightly, revealing the faint outlines of familiar rooftops and winding streets. The village lights, nurtured by both her guidance and her own renewed inner flame, glimmered with steady warmth. The whispers that had once carried hesitation now resonated with soft affirmation, a chorus of quiet, reclaimed voices that filled the mist with gentle harmony. Elowen stood in the center of the square, the first hints of morning illuminating her path. Her chest felt light, steady, filled with a warmth that radiated outward. She realized she had begun to confront her own loneliness, her own fears, and her own neglected dreams. The lanterns of the village reflected that growth, as though the fog itself had shifted to mirror her courage and renewed hope. The lantern keeper appeared beside her once more, their presence calm and unwavering. "You have learned well," they said. "The light you nurture within yourself will always find its way to others. Remember, even the smallest spark can illuminate the darkest fog. Elowen nodded, understanding deeply that this lesson extended far beyond the village, beyond the mist, beyond even the lanterns themselves. The flickering heart she had tended within herself would guide her, sustain her, and connect her to the hidden lights of every corner, every forgotten hope, and every quiet shadow waiting for recognition. And so, with the first rays of dawn brushing the village in gentle gold, she continued her journey. Each step was deliberate, mindful, and infused with a quiet, steady determination. She had faced her own hidden shadows, nurtured her flickering heart, and learned that courage and hope were inseparable, intimately bound. The fog remained, ever present, ever shifting, but it no longer intimidated her. It was a canvas, a mirror, and a companion, and in that quiet, reflective moment, Elowen understood that the journey she had begun with the first light in the fog was far from over. She had begun to restore the village, yes, but she had also restored herself. And as the whispers of the mist continued to float softly through the streets, mingling with the warmth of the lanterns and the promise of morning, she knew that the flickering heart within her, steady, patient, and resilient, would illuminate every path she chose to follow, guiding her through the fog and toward a future filled with quiet light and enduring hope. A path through shadows. The fog had thickened in the early hours, rolling across the village in heavy, undulating waves that swallowed familiar streets and alleys entirely. Elowen stood at the edge of the square, the soft glow of lanterns she had tended barely penetrating the dense mist. The village seemed poised on the cusp of vanishing, the outlines of buildings melting into gray, indistinct forms. Even the familiar cobblestones beneath her feet seemed altered, softening in the haze, as though the world itself was pressing forward in quiet. Surrender to the fog, she could feel the weight of the mist pressing against her chest, a subtle, insidious pressure that whispered fear and hesitation. It had been weeks since she first noticed the thickening fog, and now it felt almost alive, a shifting presence that responded to the light, to the movement, to the heartbeat of the village itself. She took a deep breath, drawing strength from the faint flickers of glow that had survived the night. Each small light, a testament to the resilience of memory and hope. The villagers had gathered behind her, their presence hesitant at first, but now steadying under her guidance. Each held a small flame, the lanterns they carried trembling faintly in the heavy air. Elowen understood that this was no ordinary fog. It was a test, a reflection of their collective fear, doubt, and neglect. Shadows rose from the mist, ephemeral shapes that flickered at the edges of perception, dark forms that seemed to mimic the villagers' every hesitation, shapes that whispered doubt and despair into the mind of anyone who looked too closely. Elowen stepped forward, her own lantern held high. "Keep your light steady," she called softly, her voice carrying more confidence than she fully felt. "We move together. Trust your light and trust each other." The shadows twisted and slithered along the streets, forming jagged silhouettes that attempted to block their way. Some appeared as tall, looming figures, their presence heavy and oppressive. Others were smaller, darting along the edges of the group, tugging at the courage of those who hesitated. The villagers instinctively stepped back at first, their flames flickering dangerously low. But Elowen's steady presence, her calm focus, became a guiding force, a center of gravity in the midst of uncertainty. "Do not fear them," she whispered. "They are not real. They are the fog's reflection of what we doubt in ourselves." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the small group behind her. "Every light here matters. Every heartbeat, every spark contributes to the path. Step forward together, and the shadows cannot hold us." Slowly, the villagers began to advance, their collective light forming a corridor through the densest parts of the fog. Elowen moved at the front, her own lantern steady, illuminating the path in a soft, golden glow. She noticed how the shadows recoiled from the combined warmth of the lights, flickering and wavering as the villagers' courage strengthened. With each step, the mist seemed to lift fractionally, creating small pockets of clarity in which the cobblestones, buildings, and familiar details of the village re-emerged. One shadow in particular, a tall and twisted form, lunged toward the group, its shape writhing and changing with every heartbeat. A murmur of fear rippled through the villagers. Elowen raised her hand, and the soft golden light from her lantern spread outward, touching each flicker and steadying them. "Do not let it scare you," she said firmly. "It only has power if you give it attention. Keep your focus on the light, not the shadow." The villagers adjusted their grips on their lanterns, their gazes shifting from fear to determination. Slowly, the tall shadow receded, dissolving into the mist like smoke caught in a breeze. The smaller, darting shadows followed, retreating as if recognizing the growing strength of the collective courage before them. Elowen felt a surge of hope, subtle yet profound, and pressed forward, guiding the villagers along winding streets now faintly illuminated by the interwoven glow of dozens of lanterns. The path was not straight. The fog twisted and turned around corners, curling into alleys that seemed to have no end. Every step required attention, patience, and trust. Elowen could feel the tension in the villagers' shoulders, the tightness in their grips, the flicker of uncertainty in their flames. She whispered encouragements as they moved, reminding them of the work they had done to nurture their own lights, to remember forgotten memories, and to reclaim the fragments of their hearts. Each word acted as a gentle push forward, a steadying force in the midst of the shifting shadows as they reached the old bridge near the edge of the village. Elowen sensed the fog growing even denser. The river below whispered softly, the water barely visible in the gray haze, and she realized that this crossing would test them all. Shadows coalesced at the entrance, rising higher than before, their forms more distinct and threatening. The villagers paused, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Elowen's heart thumped in response, but she steadied her breath, focusing on the warmth in her chest, the light in her hands, and the small yet persistent glimmers of courage in each person around her. "Step together," she said firmly. "Move as one. Trust in the light, and it will guide you." They stepped onto the bridge, one slow, deliberate movement at a time. The fog pressed against them, thick and cold, but the lantern's glow interlaced, forming a gentle yet steady corridor. The shadows reached toward them, trying to distort their perception, whispering doubts that tugged at hearts and minds. Yet every time a villager faltered, another extended their light, and the combined warmth repelled the shadows, causing them to waver, shrink, and eventually dissolve. Elowen felt the rhythm of the group's courage, a pulse that harmonized with her own heartbeat. The bridge no longer felt precarious. It became a channel for shared strength. Every step forward reinforced the glow of the lights, and every flicker restored to the villagers' hearts grew stronger as they moved through the oppressive mist. She realized that the shadows were not enemies to be destroyed, but mirrors, reflections of doubt that required attention and collective courage to navigate. She noticed a young boy at the back of the line, his lantern trembling violently. Shadows clung to him, attempting to snuff the flame entirely. Elowen turned back, her voice calm but firm. "Do not let them frighten you," she called. "Your light matters. It is part of us all. Hold it steady." She reached out her hand, and a warmth radiated from her lantern, mingling with the boy's flicker, steadying it just enough to continue. He nodded, breath-catching, and took a careful step forward, his courage restored by the shared light. As the villagers neared the end of the bridge, the fog began to thin slightly, responding to their combined effort. The shadows, once tall and oppressive, shrank into ephemeral mist, their whispers fading as the collective glow strengthened. The river below reflected tiny glimmers of lantern light, painting silver streaks across the water's surface. A soft breeze lifted, carrying away the densest fog and offering hints of the familiar village beyond. When they reached the far side, the villagers stopped, each breathing deeply, lanterns steady now, their light no longer flickering with fear. Elowen turned to face them, her own glow bright. She realized the truth of their journey. Together, they had created a path through the shadows, a corridor of courage and hope that could withstand even the thickest fog. The shadows were not gone entirely, but they no longer held dominion. They were diminished, unable to overpower the collective light that now pulsed steadily through the village. Elowen allowed herself a quiet smile, a sense of satisfaction washing over her. The village had begun to reclaim itself, and in the process, she had discovered the power of shared strength, the resilience of hope, and the quiet, transformative effect of courage combined. The fog remained, shifting and swirling as it always would, but it no longer felt insurmountable. The villagers had learned that the light within them, when tended with care and shared with others, could pierce even the darkest mist. The lantern keeper appeared once more, stepping through the thinning fog, their presence calm and grounding. "You have guided them well," they said softly. "The path through shadows is never easy, but together you have proven that courage, hope, and shared light can overcome even the densest darkness." Elowen nodded, understanding deeply that this chapter of their journey had solidified the village's resilience. The fog would always test them, whisper doubts, and summon shadows. But they now knew that the light within each person, when recognized and nurtured, could pierce through any gloom. As dawn began to crest over the horizon, painting the village in pale gold and silver, Elowen felt a profound sense of quiet triumph. The bridge they had crossed was more than a crossing of space. It had been a crossing of fear, doubt, and hesitation. And now, with lights steady and hearts renewed, the village pulsed with a soft, enduring glow that spoke of hope, courage, and the power of unity In even the most oppressive fog, Elowen breathed deeply, her eyes reflecting the shimmering lanterns around her. She understood that the path through shadows was never truly complete. The fog would return, and with it, challenges. But now the villagers had learned to trust in their light and in each other, to step forward despite doubt, and to let their shared strength illuminate even the darkest corners of the world. With the first rays of morning breaking through the thinning mist, Elowen led the villagers onward, their lanterns a steady stream of light, guiding the way to a future no longer shrouded entirely in shadow. And in the quiet glow of the dawn, she felt the truth of the Lantern Keeper's teaching settle in her heart, that even in the heaviest fog, when light is tended with care, courage, and unity, the path forward will always reveal itself. The dawn beyond the fog. The first light of morning crept over the horizon like a gentle promise, brushing the tops of the fog-laden rooftops with soft gold and pale amber. For hours, the village had been cloaked in a dense, silver-gray mist, but now, as the sun's first rays pierced through the shifting haze, a quiet transformation began. Elowen stood at the edge of the main square, watching the village awaken with tentative wonder. Every surface, every street corner, every shuttered window glimmered faintly under the gentle illumination of the dawn. The fog, once oppressive and mysterious, now seemed delicate, a thin veil that swirled softly before dispersing entirely. She could feel the warmth of the rising sun pressing lightly against her cheeks, a tender contrast to the chill that had clung to the night. The lanterns she had nurtured burned softly in their steady glow, the small lights blending seamlessly with the natural light creeping across the streets. They had survived the fog, guided by her care and the courage of the villagers. And now, in the new morning, they seemed to pulse with quiet pride. Each flicker was no longer fragile or tentative, it was confident, steady, a small but enduring testament to hope restored. Elowen's gaze drifted toward the cliffs, where the lighthouse stood tall and unyielding. Its beam of light, once faint and wavering, now shone steadily, slicing through the remnants of mist with clarity and purpose. It was no longer just a structure at the edge of the village. It had become a symbol, a steadfast reminder of guidance, resilience, and the quiet magic that comes from tending to what is hidden yet vital. The fog might return someday, she thought, but this morning proved that light, once restored, could never truly be extinguished. The villagers had emerged from their homes gradually, tentative smiles softening their faces as they stepped into the transformed streets. They moved with careful attention, noticing small details they had long ignored, the delicate patterns of dew on window pane, the gleam of cobblestones beneath their feet, the warmth of sunlight filtering through latticework and shutters. Many carried lanterns, some now unneeded in the presence of the morning sun. Yet they held them proudly, a reminder of the journey they had undertaken through the fog. Elowen walked among them quietly, allowing herself to absorb the collective joy that had blossomed from weeks of careful guidance and shared courage. She noticed subtle changes in posture, in expression, in the way villagers interacted with one another. Where there had once been hesitation and fear, there was now confidence and connection. Conversations were soft but earnest, a gentle hum of recognition and gratitude filling the air. The fog had tested them, pushed them to confront hidden doubts and forgotten memories. But it had also created space for renewal, for rediscovery, and for the reclamation of their inner lights in the center of the square. She paused and looked around, noting how every building, every path, every fountain seemed to shine with subtle vitality. The village had been given a second chance, not merely to exist, but to remember itself, to reclaim what had been dimmed by years of neglect and fear. She thought of every moment she had spent guiding each flicker of light, every whisper of reassurance she had offered, every step taken alongside the villagers as they navigated shadows and uncertainty. And in that reflection, she realized that the light she had nurtured in others had mirrored the light she had cultivated within herself, steadying her own heart as surely as she had steadied theirs. The streets began to fill with quiet activity. Villagers swept the cobblestones, tending to gardens, opening windows, repairing shutters, and reclaiming small, forgotten spaces. Laughter emerged cautiously at first, then with greater freedom, echoing softly against the restored facades of the homes. The youngest children ran ahead, chasing one another through the soft sunlight, their shadows dancing across the streets like elongated ribbons of joy. Elderly villagers lingered in the square, sharing memories of days long past, their voices blending with the subtle murmur of the river nearby. Each action, each gesture, each smile reflected the rekindling of courage and the recognition of life. Reclaimed Elowen's attention returned to the lighthouse. Its beam no longer trembled with uncertainty. It reached steadfastly across the water, illuminating the path beyond the village and into the wider world. She felt a swell of understanding. The last light in the fog was not only a metaphor for what they had reclaimed, but also a guiding presence that reminded them all that the process of remembrance and courage was ongoing. It would require care, patience, and attention, but they now knew the power inherent in small lights, in shared courage, and in collective hope. As the villagers continued to reclaim their routines, Elowen noticed subtle connections emerging among them. Neighbors paused to greet one another with genuine recognition rather than habit. Old quarrels softened into apologies and laughter. Shared memories of hardship and resilience were recounted, reinforcing bonds that had long been neglected. The fog had not only challenged them individually, but had also revealed the interdependence of their lives, the delicate threads connecting one to another, and the quiet strength that could be summoned when each light was acknowledged and nurtured. She paused at the edge of the river, watching the water reflect the morning sky, its surface dotted with faint ripples from the gentle breeze. The reflections of the village lights mingled with the natural glow, creating a mosaic of illumination that extended beyond the cobblestone streets and into the river itself. It was as if the village had expanded beyond its physical boundaries, carrying with it the energy of remembrance, courage, and quiet magic. Elowen felt a sense of serenity wash over her, a profound peace that came not from the absence of challenge, but from the knowledge that light, once nurtured, cannot be truly extinguished. The lantern keeper appeared once more, stepping lightly across the square, their presence calm and reassuring. "The fog has lifted," they said softly, their voice blending with the morning air. "The village has remembered itself, and you, Elowen, have tended the last light in the fog. But remember, light is never static. It must be nurtured continually, in yourself and in others." Elowen nodded, understanding deeply the lesson embedded in those words. She had led the villagers through shadows, doubt, and fear. She had guided them to acknowledge forgotten memories and rediscover courage. And in the process, she had nurtured her own light, steadying her heart and learning that the quiet, persistent glow within her could illuminate even the densest fog. The villagers gathered around, their eyes bright with gratitude and wonder. Some still held lanterns. Others simply stood in the sunlight, basking in the warm glow that now embraced the village. No words were needed. Each glance, each smile, each gesture carried recognition and acknowledgement of what had been restored. The journey through fog, through shadow, through whispered doubt had been long, but the results were visible. The village, once muted and uncertain, now thrummed with life, courage, and subtle magic. Elowen walked slowly through the streets, letting her gaze linger on every detail, the sunlight catching the edges of rooftops, dew glistening on flowers, children's laughter bouncing between walls, elderly villagers tending carefully to small gardens. Every element seemed imbued with newfound vitality, a reminder that even in the quietest, most overlooked places, light could flourish if tended with care and patience. By mid-morning, the fog had entirely dissipated, leaving the village bathed in unbroken sunlight. The lighthouse's beam continued to shine, now fully a symbol of guidance and resilience, a reminder of the nights spent navigating shadows and doubts. The village itself had become a testament to the quiet magic of remembering, of collective courage, and of the enduring power of small, steady lights to transform even the densest darkness. Elowen stood atop the small hill overlooking the village, her eyes tracing the streets, now alive with movement, her heart swelling with quiet satisfaction. She understood that the journey was ongoing. The fog might return, and new challenges might arise. But now the villagers had seen the truth. Light, when nurtured, could never be entirely lost. The last light in the fog was no longer fragile. It had become a symbol, a beacon, a reminder that even in silence and shadow, resilience and hope endure. As she descended toward the village, the warmth of the morning sun blending with the gentle glow of the remaining lanterns, she felt a profound connection to every life she had touched, every memory she had helped reclaim, and every spark of courage that had ignited along the way. The fog had been a teacher, shadows a guide, and the lanterns a bridge between fear and courage. And now, with the dawn fully embracing the village, the lesson was clear. The last light in the fog, once nurtured, becomes a living, breathing symbol of resilience, connection, and the quiet magic of remembering. Elowen paused once more at the lighthouse, her eyes tracing the beam that stretched steadily across the river and into the horizon. She smiled softly, understanding that the light would always remain a beacon for future moments of doubt or darkness. The village had reclaimed its warmth, its courage, and its unity, but more importantly, it had learned that even the smallest light, tended carefully and shared generously, could guide them through the fog of any uncertainty. And so, with the village alive around her, the streets bathed in sunlight, and the lighthouse shining unwaveringly, Elowen stepped forward with quiet confidence. The last light in the fog was no longer a fragile hope, was a living testament to resilience, the magic of remembrance, and the enduring power of light to guide hearts through even the densest, most persistent shadow. And now, dear dreamers, the first morning light spreads across the village. The fog has lifted, and the last light shines steadily, carrying peace, courage, and quiet magic into your night. Let your mind rest, your heart feel safe, and your dreams drift gently until morning. Thank you for joining us tonight with Whispers of the Night. Sleep well, dream deeply, and remember that even in quiet moments, light and hope are always with you. Good night, dear dreamers, until we meet again.